Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She's award-winning painter, and well, being a mentor to no other than Miss Karen DeLoach.
Good day to you, sir. How are you?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, like you, Miss Karen. and can you can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I've been an artist all my life and theater person. I love acting and filmmaking, and I have been to school a lot for degrees in painting, drawing, theater, ceramics, and filmmaking. I teach art at a college using textbooks that I've written, and I love art history, and I love to look at art and to make art, and it is a joy of mine to help stir up the creative in others.
Congratulations for your achievement, Miss Karen, and sharing to the world. So, what are the basic tools and materials needed to start painting?
Well, it really doesn't take a lot of materials. People are surprised when I say that. But basic paints of any kind that you want to start with, usually acrylics are readily available almost everywhere. And then you need some instruction and you need to learn the color wheel and the color theory. If you want to paint in a way that is naturalistic or looks like nature, then you need to understand how to mix and match colors. And that's one of the things that I did not learn in art school. When I went to school, they were all about abstract expressionism and pop art and funky things. So color didn't really matter as far as naturalism. So my professors did not like my paintings at the time, and consequently, I didn't have the skills I needed to do the paintings I wanted. But then I got a mentor, someone who had been to the Chicago Art Institute back when they taught fundamentals, and he taught me how to paint. He taught me about the color wheel and how to find colors and shadows, which, up to that point, I only knew you use black, or make dark brown. And I didn't understand that there's color everywhere. And he taught me, and I built my skills to where I could finally accomplish the paintings that I really wanted to do. There's nothing wrong with abstract expressionists. I love it too. I love some beautiful work, but it's not what I wanted to do. So it took some extra help. And I love to do murals. Interesting story. When I was a little girl, my mom would give me crayons and paper, and me and my siblings would color, but the paper was never big enough. So I ended up coloring on the walls, much to my mother's chagrin, and she would make me get it all cleaned off. She didn't know that someday people would pay me to paint on their walls, and I've done lots of murals.
Ah, congratulations for
Thank
those. So, what are some essential techniques for blending colors and painting?
Well, really, it's as I was describing, it's understanding the color wheel and how colors work together to create the shadow colors. Because it's really in creating three dimensions, it's understanding how the complementary colors work. Like the complement of red is the opposite color on the color wheel, which is green. And if you want to, when you want to brown down, show the shadows in something red, you use green. And likewise, if you're painting a scene and you have all this beautiful, lush leaves and trees and branches, you want to be able to make beautiful greens. You add red to create the shadow colors in the green. So this is the secret I love to teach when I teach people how to paint. I teach them color wheel and how to use that. Same thing with what about shadows in the sky? If you have a blue sky and you see some shadowed clouds come across, what color do you use to create those shadows? The complement of blue is orange. So you would use a little bit of orange and a lot of white to create these gray cloud colors that are in the sky, often even when the sky is blue. So understanding the color wheel and how to use these complement colors. And then there is yellow, like yellow sunflowers. Well, purple is the color that makes the shadow color in yellow, and yellow is the color you use when you're using purple to create shadows. So understanding that and not using black. Now, this is, of course, I'm talking about when you want to do nature, life in nature, because we're not black and white and red and yellow. We're shades of colors. We're all so similar. It's just unbelievable how that can be used against us because, we're not one color. Nobody is. We're all various shades of tans and creams and browns. So it's really beautiful to me when people understand how to mix and match these colors and create beauty that way, because I think it's part of our humanity. It's who we are. We appreciate beauty and we love the colors of a sunset. And if you look at the colors of a sunset in those red oranges and blue greens, those are complementary colors. It's why they are so vivid against each other when we see a brilliant sunset. It just, moves our soul. And when that happens, we release serotonin, the happiness chemical, and it makes our soul feel good, and we walk in more wellness, which is one of my passions, is to see people stirred up in their creativity to be operating in their most brilliant wellness in their minds and brains, just like you are right now as a podcaster. You are dealing with all the left brain technology and order and scheduling and everything that you do to make the podcast happen, but you're creating content from nothing, which is utilizing your right brain. You're coming up with the ideas on what to do, and as you work your right brain, left brain, it creates neural pathways, which creates more brilliance and absolutely creates wellness in your soul. So I'm passionate about this for
Mm,
not just artists, but everybody.
very well said. Ms. Karen, so what are the fundamental principles of color theory that painters should understand?
Well, the basics of color is you have to have light to see color, as well as, of course, eyes to see. But between your rods and cones in your eyes as you receive the colors and they bounce back, it's amazing how much color changes every time you turn on a light or turn off a light, or the sun goes behind a cloud. As a filmmaker, you're trying to control the shadows. So if you're shooting a movie outside, you don't want bright sunlight. They'll always have some kind of covering to shade the sun off their actors, because too many shadows, they can't control the way it looks. So they create the clouds are like a filter. So they filter through the light to see the colors. And that is a very important factor, because color changes with different colors of light.
What are some common methods for creating depth and perspective in a painting?
Yeah, it really starts with drawing. One of my books is How to Draw, and it's about building that sense of depth through lines, through shading. And we create that depth and color, as I was talking about, with the complements. So if you were going to do a painting of me, you'll come up with this color from my face. You would use a lot of white. I have makeup on, so I have these pink tones. So you'd use a little bit of red. But to create these shadows around, you would actually add green, a little bit of green to the red to create the shadows. And when you create shadows, it creates depth. It makes the sense of where things are lighter, they tend to come forward. Where they're darker, they move back. When I teach shading, that's the way I teach it. Is if you were going to do, like, let's say this cup. I don't know if your viewers have video or just audio, but you would make this the lightest part because it's closest to you. It's a round cup, and you would let the shadows be on the side, and you would pull the shadow forward and get lighter and lighter and lighter, with a value scale of being just the white color of the paper in the front, and that creates depth. So we tend to see shadows recede and light moves forward. So that is a good technique for painters and artists to use if they're trying to create more depth. You're always going to see the lightest place next to the darkest place. So that's another technique that artists see. You don't have, if you have all medium range tones, nothing is sticking out. And so there's always a good place of contrast that brings the attention of the viewer to that place. You can do it with a sharp piece of color, like I have neutral tones, and then you have this sharp, bright coral colored cup that's kind of a red orange, a light red orange, and your eye would go to that because it's in contrast to everything else around me are shades of tans and browns, and a little bit of green. So I got a greens in my shirt. So these are all wonderful techniques that artists have, and you can learn them. If you want to learn, you can learn how to paint. You can learn how to draw. These are techniques. One of the first things I do with my students is I have a plastic ball and I pass it around the room, because being able to draw and what you see is an eye-hand coordination issue. One gentleman that I'm working with, he was diagnosed recently with Parkinson's, and his right hand is shaking. So he can't paint and draw with his right hand right now because it's going like this. So I'm teaching him to draw and paint with his left hand, which absolutely is about, he's got these neural connections because he's already been learning to paint, already been learning to draw, making these wonderful right brain, left brain connections. And so, it's practice learning to use his left hand now, and you can do it. I've also seen a young man who had a stroke. He had been suffering from ADD and dyslexia, and he wasn't thriving in his academics, and his mom brought him to my studio, and he started thriving in the arts. He could paint, he could draw, he could sculpt. He was winning competitions as a young man, which gave him confidence to have the courage to overcome his disabilities to be able to graduate from school. And then unfortunately got a brain infection that caused a stroke, which paralyzed him on the right side of his body. And he couldn't talk. He couldn't walk. His right hand was starting to curl up. They were working on that at the hospital. He was released 4 months later, and his mom brought him right back to my studio. And as a result, he started learning to draw and paint and write left-handed. He also started being able to talk. His neurosurgeon called me and said, what are you doing with David? Because he's getting healing on his right side. And he said, this is a result of what you're doing, teaching him. He's stronger with his left hand than I am, and I'm a surgeon, and he's getting healing. And now that young man can talk, he can walk. He's still stronger with his left hand than the right hand, but he's able to communicate. He's got a great sense of humor. So I became convinced in the healing power of art. So all of your listeners, if it is in their heart they want to paint, or they want to draw, or they want to sculpt, I'm telling you, you can do it. You can learn. Even though my professors in college convinced me I couldn't paint, because I couldn't do it the way they wanted me to. I wasted 10 years of my life not being able to finish a painting because of those negative words. I believed them. They were the experts. They convinced me, you're not good enough. You can't paint. And I know some of your listeners may be suffering from those same kind of things in their mind. You're not good enough. You can't do it. And I'm telling you, yes, you can. And you can develop those right brain, brilliant, creative part of your brain is there. It's still there. It's waiting to be explored. And you can learn to draw, and you can learn to paint and love it and have more fulfillment in your life. But all of the arts, I don't know if you sing, Daniel, or if you do anything with music. My sons are all musicians. But studies have shown that just singing in the shower, because I'm the kind of person that can't really carry a tune very well, but I can sing in the shower. When you're in the shower and you're rub-a-dub-dubbing, scrubbing, you're resting your left brain, and you're not trying to figure anything out. You just, singing along your favorite song. And when you're creating neural pathways in your brain, left, right brain, getting out of maybe some brain fog, and you come out, you're releasing serotonin, the happiness chemical, and you get out drawing up, and all of a sudden an idea comes to you that you hadn't thought of. Maybe a new kind of podcast that or a new speaker or a new direction, or solve a problem if you're writing poetry or writing a book, and you know, oh, you get an answer to a question you'd had in your mind because you've just been creating these neural pathways, creating more brilliance in your own brain, just singing in the shower. And these scientists have done studies about it. So I'm saying sing in the shower.
Very well said, Miss Karen. But before we go, and I want to shout out my listeners in Switzerland. Thank you, Switzerland, for supporting this podcast because in VOD I got 40% audience share. Zurich, Arago, Geneva, Lucerne, Bern, Schaffhausen, Ticino, and a lot more places in Switzerland. Again, thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower authors, writers all over the world like Miss Karen DeLoach. So, Miss Karen, what is the importance of composition in painting and how it can be effectively achieved?
That's a really good question. By the way, I love Switzerland. I learned to ski there.
Yes, thank you, Switzerland.
Yeah, I love teaching composition because it's really one of the basic skills of an art. What makes composition good? And I teach it. I teach composition because we need to be able to tell where things should go. And that's one of the things as photographers. Now everybody listening here, I know, has a cell phone, right? And we have the capacity with our cell phones to take pictures. Well, that is one of a lot of the cameras have screens, have grids. You'll notice a grid when you go to edit your picture on your iPhone, right? The little grid comes up. Why is that? It's giving you what they call the rule of thirds. There's two horizontal lines and two vertical lines, equidistant. And the places where those lines intersect are the most powerful places to place your subject or what you want people to look at first. If you notice, I don't sit right dab smack in the middle of the camera. You don't sit smack dab in the middle. There's just something instinctive, you know, compositionally. It looks better if you're off center just a little bit and you've got a good amount of distance around your head. You're not too low, not too high, not to one side or the other. I've had some people talking to me and you only saw, you know, this part of their head. So you have a sense of composition right now. Even wearing, you know, dark clothing against your light background brings a lot of contrast and attention to your face, which is what you want when you're a podcaster. So composition is really important. You don't have a lot of distracting things around you. You've got a focus. So the ability to use composition wisely, as we've already talked about with contrast, light and dark, you know, just even with me with a light background, I don't have any paintings on the wall behind me for a reason right here because, you know, it'd be distracting at this point because I got lots of paintings everywhere, all over my house, lots and lots of
That's awesome, Miss Karen. Awesome. And thank you for sharing your talents to the world. So, what are some strategies for overcoming artist block when painting?
You know, there's nothing like going to a gallery or a museum to get inspired. The town I live in, Charleston, South Carolina, is along the coast. We have a lot of sunshine in our town. We have a lot of watercolor artists and painters who are doing the beaches and the palmetto trees and the flora and fauna and the skies. We have very wonderful skies, and so I love to go to the museums. And we have a day a month where the galleries stay open later and the artists are there and they serve snacks. And so we call it First Friday, and friends of mine would go and you look at art. And I was working on a commission painting of someone's view of the marshes. And so I was looking at the artists and getting inspired by how they were doing the marshes. So if you have a writer's block, look at art that you love, be inspired by other people's work. We're not copying, we're just getting inspired. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But what you bring to the table is your soul. That's why AI art will never take over human art. It can be perfect composition, perfect colors, but it misses that soul, that piece of you that you add to the table when you paint, when you draw, when you sculpt, when you take photographs, when you cook a meal. Just following a recipe, usually most of us add something, change something, especially if we've done it before. Well, that's utilizing your right brain brilliance to come up with something else that you can enjoy to eat or share with friends and family. Gardening is another way to be creative. Choosing your colors. My husband took color theory from me. He's a master gardener, and it enabled him to really understand what colors to put together. The purple pansies with the yellows, or the oranges and the blues, and why those colors work so nicely together. Why red roses against those green leaves is so powerful. It pops. The green pops the red out. The red pops the green out because they're complements. So the understanding how these things work just hugely benefits life. Or if you're a decorator, a designer, or you love fashion, understanding how to put colors together. And how it looks on you with your colors, your own complexion colors, it enables you to be more noticed, or people just notice your clothes, right? You really want people to notice your face, because that's where your eyes are, that's where your mouth is. And so we want to be able to look at people's face and the clothes to enhance our coloring, enhance our personalities. So these are all ways that understanding color and painting and drawing can enhance your life, no matter what you want to do, not just for artists, but for everybody.
For everybody, people. And before we go on, Miss Karen, I want to invite you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our Food 101 Culinary Course Volume 2. And it's all about how to create a delicious food, people. So please do listen, Food 101. And of course, our books are out, not only one, but 13 volumes, people. Food 101 Basics until 13 is only the books that you need, how to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Miss Karen, what are the steps
Daniel
to
didn't pay me to talk about food now. He didn't pay me to talk about recipes, because,
Yeah.
food is also about the way it looks, right? I mean, doesn't the way it looks and
Yes.
smell and just enhance, how it's going to taste? So these are beautiful. So congratulations on.
So, Miss Karen, what are the steps to properly preparing a canvas or painting surface?
Well, that's a really good question, because that's something that, if you're a beginner, can be taken care of for you. If you purchase your canvases in an art store, they're already going to have gesso on them. They're not just going to be rolls of raw canvas and stretcher strips, which is what we had to do as students. We had to cut our own buy our canvas, cut it, stretch it onto the stretcher boards, and then paint the gesso on it. Usually, if you're purchasing either canvases or canvas boards, they're already going to have that gesso preparation on them. So you don't have to usually worry about that. The difference between a stretched canvas, which gives a little bounce to the painting, if you like that feeling of the movement with your brush, then that's a nice option. If you like a harder surface, when they stretch the canvas over a board, it's called canvas board. They come in all kinds of sizes, and it's an easy surface to work on. So I recommend canvas boards for beginners. They're not very expensive. You can get them 3 to a pack. It's really a great way to, if your materials don't cost a fortune, then you're not feeling like they're too precious and you can't use them to practice and to learn from. Nobody is perfect when they begin. Everybody has a learning curve. Even all your favorite artists, the Leonardo da Vinci's and the Michelangelos and the Van Goghs, they all had a learning curve. They were taught how to draw, taught how to paint. And we don't see their beginning drawings. Yes, they started out with talent, but talent isn't enough. It's not what really matters. What really matters is bringing yourself to the table, getting the skills you need. And there's so many ways to do that. I love to do it myself. And because I had such negative feedback for my painting efforts at first, and it took so long to overcome it, I always create what I call a no criticism zone wherever you are learning. And this is what you have to choose, to not let what I call the left brain bully tell you you're not good enough or you can't do it. Because we've got to like shut down that left brain, just like in the shower when we're singing and no one's criticizing whether we're staying on key or not. We're just having fun. When you're learning to paint, you need to let that right brain come to the forefront and really see what you're looking at, and take your paints onto your canvases and enjoy the process of learning. One way that neuro arts scientists recommend is just free forming. When you just want to start letting your brain just relax, they call it neurodoodles, and you just let your pen or your marker or your brush just kind of go as it feels, and then you can add color to it. And they tend to look like the amoebas and our brain cells, they just tend to connect and keep everything round and organic, and that seems to bring a lot of healing and peace to people when they do it, which is why we have adult coloring books. Have you ever heard of adult coloring books? It's not just for children. My 92-year-old mother was coloring with her great granddaughters recently, and she called me, Karen, you're right. Coloring isn't just for children. I got so much relaxation and peace from it. So, whatever materials you have, use what you have available. Don't be picky. Sometimes if I have canvases, it didn't work. I use gesso and paint over it. Gesso is a product that covers the canvas for you. It's a white cover up, and some people like black, but most of us use white. And you can start over on your canvas. You can use it again if you didn't like your efforts. It's a very peaceful process if you let yourself create a no criticism zone. Let yourself learn. Give yourself grace to practice and to learn. Use the materials at hand. Use what's available in your stores, and enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Watch some videos. Let me mentor you.
Definitely. So, Miss Karen, how can artists protect and preserve their finished paintings?
Well, it depends upon what materials you use. If you use watercolor paint, which is really fragile, you've got to cover it in glass, under glass. What I do with my watercolors is I get giclée prints of them, and then I preserve my original watercolors outside the light. Like I said, we have a lot of sunshine here, and it can fade your watercolors really bad, very fast, and it even can fade prints if they're not giclée. Giclée is a special kind of ink reproduction. It's a little more expensive, but it's worth it if you are trying to preserve your beautiful watercolors. Acrylic is almost impervious to destruction. It's a plastic polymer paint, and it is just beautifully endurable. It was created in the 1950s for industrial paint, and artists, the abstract expressionists, are the first ones to start using the acrylic paints, and they are really endure very well, especially inside. Outside, you probably need to use a polyurethane to cover your paints to keep them to last longer. Oil paints need to air out and dry and cure for a long time before you really expose them to the light too much. That takes a little bit of time, but they should last. These colors should preserve for a long, long time. The modern paints are the chemicals are very well mixed, and they'll still stay strong for a long, long time. I have a painting from college, which was 50 years ago. It still looks an oil painting. It still looks really good. I have some from my godmother that are even 75 years old that still look good. So it can last real well. Try not to if they're stretched canvas, don't let anything poke into the canvas, because you won't be able to get that out.
Definitely. So, what role does underpainting play in the development of a painting?
Underpainting is really an ancient technique. It is. A lot of the Renaissance painters, if you've seen any of their work with a lot of browns, they're very dark. They used underpainting because the bright colors of blue and your reds were so expensive that they would do all the shading. We were talking about the shading, the darks and the lights. They would create the darks and the lights in the underpaintings. So then they just had to bring in the bright jewel tones, the golds and the reds and the blues, for the highlights of the painting, and it didn't cost as much for them to paint. So it was a good way to create the depth and the drawing and the depth before they added those expensive colors. There is some, if you do oil paint, you'll see that some colors are more expensive than others, but not like it used to be when they had to mix and make their own paints. So we don't have to do that much anymore.
Yes, we are now on the new generation, new generation of artists. So, Miss Karen, can you please invite our listeners to support your books, support your online courses, and as being an artist?
Well, thank you. I have made a three-part pop-up podcast that I would love your listeners to go to, called www.getcreativewithkaren.com. And what those three episodes do is talk more about stirring up your creativity, the science behind it, that marriage dance between science and art that even Steve Jobs talked about, Apple having a philosophy of not just technology, but also art. Even Albert Einstein said that creativity is the intelligence having fun. So I talk about these things in this pop-up podcast. So go to www.getcreativewithkaren.com. But I also have on Amazon How to Draw a Book. I wrote a textbook for my students, art history and appreciation textbook. If you really want to get an ebook about the history of Western art, it's a 630-page book about with 1,800 images, because I come from a rural state and I wanted them to see lots of art. So I curated a book with 1,800 images in it. And if you listen to that pop-up podcast, there is ways to make appointments to talk to me personally about how I could help you.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Karen DeLoach, because if you support her, more arts to come, more books to come. I love the novel of Miss Owens, The Crow That Sing. I think it was inspired by the North Carolina.
Ah,
Yes, you need to read it. Where the Crow That Sing by Miss Owens. So,
yeah,
Miss Karen, thank you for your time.
my pleasure.
More
God
to come,
bless.
people. See you soon.